All right, welcome to the Hangin with Gannon podcast. This is going to be our first episode, the maiden voyage. We'll see if they're going to ask us to come back to do another episode. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Maryland real estate market. My guest today is Scott Smolen from RE/MAX Leading Edge. Scott's got nearly 3 decades of expertise in the Anne Arundel County market. He's a lifelong Marylander, raised in Bowie, and now a resident of Anne Arundel County. And I met Scott 24 years ago at an open house. I was new to the area, came from Northern Virginia. My wife was talking about this area, Piney Orchard, and I had never been there before. And we were driving around, walked in an open house. Remember that when that was a long time ago? We ended up buying that house.
Yeah.
It may have been the next door neighbor, Ronnie, who brought me a beer, and that's probably why why I ended up buying that house. But why don't, Scott, you tell our listeners in 30 seconds, give us your elevator pitch. What makes you different in this market?
Well, I think in different, I mean, I would say that, first and foremost is the experience. I mean, we've been in this market for this, now, like you said, almost 3 decades. So it's 26 years. I got licensed back in 1999.
Right.
I've been through the changes in the market. So a lot has changed over the years, from when I first got in the market to where we are now, and you have to evolve with the business. But the core principles of the business are still the same. And what that is you have to put a principle. To me, there's a premium on relationships, not transactions. So, like as you said, like we've known each other now 24 years. You happen to come in an open house. We play fantasy football together. Like
right.
we've been friends for a long time. But I value the relationship more than just a transaction. Like a lot of people, they sell a house, you never see the person again.
Right.
And so to me, it's like you build relationships, and then as time goes on, what's happened in this business over the years is things have evolved. I mean, we started back then. It was we did a lot of mailings, a lot of postcards. Color brochures were just coming into effect. Right. Things of that. I mean, there was no such thing as social media or anything like that.
You're doing ads in newspapers, maybe.
Oh yeah, magazines.
The carts at the grocery store.
The carts. We used the magazines. All these things. Movie theater screens. I mean, right. All kinds of stuff that we don't do anymore because we've evolved in other things. Because people have, in general, have migrated to other places. So what we have to do is meet the buyers where they are, meet the sellers where they are, and part of that is. But still, all that is how you develop relationships because you contact people, but that's just the first step in the process. It's how do you go about dealing with somebody? How do you go about letting them know that you're really you want to make sure you're looking out for their best interests, not your own. And when I got in the business, a couple agents that I used to admire, they said, just help people get whatever they want and do whatever's best for them, and you'll be able to have whatever you want. And that's kind of my philosophy. So I've always tried to put the customer first. And if that doesn't matter if they're buying or selling, and just kind of treat people. I mean, there's a million rules in real estate, but it's the golden rule: treat people the way you want to be treated, and things usually work out pretty well.
I always find it interesting to find out from agents the origin story. I feel like everyone's got a different one, and wild how they got in there. So, why don't you tell everybody what's your origin story? How did you end up in real estate?
Well, that's an interesting thing. It was back when I was in high school. I went to Bowie High School, and my accounting teacher at the time was also part-time. He was a full-time teacher and a full-time realtor, so he worked a lot, and I always admired that. And in addition to him doing that, I had a landscaping company. When I was in high school, I was about 15 years old, I started a landscaping business. And that's why when you see my logo and what it says is rooted in tradition, focused on the future, it goes back to the roots of a kid with a lawnmower walking around. I say it was 15, 14. I mean, I was like 12 walking around cutting people's grass. This teacher he was one of my clients. And as time went on, I used to cut his grass and do his maintenance and everything. And we used to talk about real estate, and I was always curious about it. And as I was going through that, and I built that company up pretty big. I mean, I had like 20 people working for me, 5, 6 trucks on the road. In fact, it was to the point where like it was a full-time business. I was able to buy my first house with that and everything else. So there were no issues with the business. The only issue I had is the seasonal nature of it. And as I got a little bit older, I didn't like the fact that it was hard to have the labor that I needed. I just didn't have the pool of people that I wanted that I could depend on. I mean, I'm very much, if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm there. And if you're expecting 20 guys to show up at work and only 16 show up, there's usually problems. And that used to drive me mad. And it was seasonal in nature, so that in the spring and the summer, you're killing yourself. In the fall, and then there's nothing to do.
And what do you do with those folks in the winter?
So it was tough.
Yeah.
So what happened is, as I was talking to, I said, maybe, I've always enjoyed real estate, and I know the area really well because I'm born and raised in Bowie, and then in Anne Arundel County. I said I was born. I was actually born in Silver Spring and lived in Clinton for a couple of years. But I've been in the area for a long time, so I knew the area. Knew all the houses, knew all the streets, knew everything. And as far as the locale, so I was like, I kind of I was curious about it. And he said he was going to get out of the business in time, so it made sense for me. He said, "Well, if you get your license, you can come work for me." So that's how I got started in it, and I went and worked for him for a few years, and then as time went on, we went separate ways, and he worked a couple more years, and he retired, and I was going to do real estate originally, like a lot of people do, as like a second job to get started in it, but I remember the first weekend I really got into it. I went out like within 2 days I sold 3 houses, and I came home and I was like I think I'm pretty good at this. Like this isn't
the
too
part
bad.
time may not maybe full time. Right?
The other full time job was getting in the way of the part time job.
Right.
So I came home and I was like, this doesn't make sense for me to. So I continued with my landscaping business for another year, sold the company, and then got into full time into real estate, which it worked out really well. It was it was a business that I took a lot of the skills from landscaping. People said, "What do you mean landscaping? You're out there, pesticide applicant." Well, I had to sell jobs. I was doing landscape designs and things of that nature. So I've already had the ability to go in and sit with somebody and kind of explain to them, what I could do, how I could do it, what they could expect from me. It's the same thing in a real estate when you're listing a house.
Sure. Well, you touched a little bit on the areas that you focus on, but why don't you get a little bit deeper dive into the areas that you specialize in, and maybe talk about a little bit about over those years of seeing it, how those areas have evolved, the major growth that we've seen in those areas.
Well, I mean, you touched on it at the beginning. I mean, Piney Orchard, I do a lot of business there, and people say, "Well, why? What drew you there?" Well, that's where I bought my first house. Right. So that's where I was, and when I was, like I said, when I was doing landscaping, we bought our first house in Piney Orchard when it was just being built. Mm-hmm. There was no Food Lion or shopping center or anything there. The Strawberry Lake Way that didn't even cut through, let alone another pool. But it was a strawberry. Farm, pretty much. It was a little bit different.
Right.
So I did a lot of business there. That area has evolved a ton to where it is now with a complete community. So I had knowledge of that as it was being built. So I know the different enclaves a lot better than a lot of people, because I know which builder was in which area, who built which house, how they went by it, just because I was around it all the time. I do a lot there, and obviously I do a lot in Bowie because I grew up down there. My family grew up in the T section of Bowie, so anybody that lived in Bowie, they usually go in a section. I grew up in the T section in a colonial, so there's about 5 or 6 different Levitt homes that are throughout Bowie, different models, and we grew up in a 3-bedroom colonial. So not only did we grow up down there, my mom was an administrator at Holy Trinity School, which is a middle school down there. My dad was a teacher at Prince George's Community College and a soccer coach for a long time there, and not only did we grow up in that area, but obviously had a lot of connections down there. So that's how those are the areas I really got started. And then as time's gone on, obviously you're going to work outside of just two neighborhoods. But my core business is that Odenton, Bowie, Crofton, Gambrills area, and then I say Fort Meade surrounding areas. And if you take that out, then you kind of spread out toward Annapolis and those areas. And that's basically the area that the majority of my business has been, but it's been a growing area too. Yeah. I mean, we talk about Piney Orchard. When I first got in, there was barely any homes, to the point where it is now. I mean, Two Rivers was just a dream.
Right.
And now you've got thousands of homes. I mean, and that's just right down the road.
Well, that whole I mean, I've been here 24 years, and that growth of the Route 3, it's just become...
I mean, Route 3 is unbelievable. I mean, I think there was only like 1 or 2 chicken restaurants back in Route 3.
Right.
Now they call it Chicken Highway or whatever.
Yeah, there is Chicken Highway now with all this.
So, I mean, it was, the whole Watchapel Center, Wegmans, none of that was there. I mean, it was that, the Safeway was up there. That came later.
Yeah. But I remember that whole, that second Watchapel shopping center was like, they kept talking about it, and we're like, we might be getting a green turtle. I mean, like that was exciting. And now
a movie theater, that was a big one.
Yeah, the movie theater,
and Target came in.
Yeah,
I mean, and none of that was there. So what with the growth came more homes, but also came more traffic. And we've seen it over time. So there's more people in a smaller space. It's higher density than what it once was. Yeah. Things have changed, and if you weren't there and you didn't see it happening, then you wouldn't know that. Not to say that you might go into the wrong green turtle restaurant, but,
right,
it's not the end of it. But we've seen that happen over the number of years, and then the other part is going up and down those roads all the time, and you know this from your children too, is with the sports. I mean, we're going all over the place, and you get to know the county pretty well.
Yeah.
when your kids are playing travel sports.
Yeah, right.
You get to know the state pretty well.
Yeah.
You get to know 95
Yeah,
pretty well.
the county, way beyond the county for all over the state. And
as they got older, you get to learn the airports even better.
Right.
It's just one thing after the next.
You talked about the airport too. The ease to get to BWI is incredible. I mean, just the ability just to go right down that 170 and be there, and you can be dropped off in 15 minutes, and the ease of getting in and out of that airport just makes it.
It's great. It's great for people that have to. I mean, obviously, when you take a look at a map and you say, where's this area we're talking about, Crofton, Gambrills, Odenton, Bowie, and you put it in the middle. I mean, it's right between Baltimore, Annapolis, and DC.
Yeah, incredible.
It's a perfect location, easy route to the airport, so people can get in and out to. And BWI has a ton of flights out. You can go almost anywhere out of there. I mean, it's not as big as maybe internationals, maybe a place like Dulles or something. But there's So there's a lot of opportunity. If you're going to go to Florida, I think Southwest flies 10 times a day back and forth to different cities in Florida. So it's very nice in that regard. It's quick, it's easy, and there's the MARC rail is right there in Odenton too, which makes it very easy to commute. If people don't want to do MARC or they're going into DC, you just shoot down to New Carrollton. You can go right in on the metro if you want.
Yeah,
a lot of options, and that's what people say. Well, why does the area grow so much? Well, I mean, it's a perfect place, location.
Well, let's maybe talk a little bit about some clients, different kinds of clients that you work with. Is there a different tack that you take for the first-time home buyers, or maybe those that are like the move-up buyers, luxury home type buyers, or investors? Is there a different tack that you take?
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, first-time home buyers tend to come in and they're focused on different things. First-time home buyer tends to be like, how much money am I going to need out of pocket, and what's my monthly payment going to be? And they want to compare that to wherever they've been living. If they've been living with their parents, it's a total shock because they haven't had any bills. But if they've lived in an apartment or something, they're looking at it saying, hey, I'm paying $1,600 a month in rent now, so that's all I want to pay. And you're like, you have to explain to them, like, it's going to be a little different because of tax implications. You can actually afford a little more now, and there's some things like that. But they tend to need a little more information. But with today, 25 years ago, they need a lot more information because it was very hard. A lot of people come in today more prepared.
They have more access to info.
They spend more time researching things and getting a better idea of what's going on around them. But there's nothing like sitting down and talk, because there's still terminology that goes through that. They might read it, but they don't understand what it means.
Right.
And I mean, for instance, we see this a lot when people say, like, what's an appraised value and a market analysis? Like, they don't realize they're two different things. Like, the appraisals come, from the bank side of it, and the market analysis, how's it fit into the market? So they need to understand, like, this is the basics. And so we want to make sure that we take the process a little slower. Yeah. A lot of times it's a little more time up front just to understand things. First time buyers tend to be, like I said, more payment sensitive. And they also look at it a little bit different than somebody who might be looking at buying a luxury home, because they don't really know what they want yet.
Yeah.
When the cycle tends to be, the first time buyer comes in, they're payment conscious. Second house that somebody buys usually they want size. A lot of times, first time buyer might be a condo, a townhouse, or something. They don't have a yard, or maybe they have a very small yard or something. Then the next one, they want more land, more space, more maybe garages. Like, the different things come into play. By the time you get into the third or fourth house, it tends to be more customization. I had a nice big kitchen, but it didn't have the.
They knew they found out what they want from the other house, and they're not.
And now they want to make the adjustments going into the next house. So yeah, they still might want some more size. It depends on the person's situation, and then you get through that part. And I'm saying this in a general way, because some people have different different cycles.
Not everyone's the same.
No, they get to that part, and you get to the part where you start downsizing. It tends to be, now I don't want steps. I want to be able to live where I can live on one level, and it's easy to get in and out of the bathroom and the hallways, and I need more. I'm thinking that down the road, maybe I might need a walker or wheelchair, so I want wide hallways. Lower things to reach for the thermostat. Things like that go into play when you get into the active adult communities. They start thinking about that too. So it's a cycle. But I also, like, I remember about our second house, and we were in a neighborhood, Saddlebrook, which is pretty big houses, a lot of area. And there was some older folks that were in there, and it was like, talking to them, it was like the first like kind of big house they had in there, and you'd ask, like, why do you want that? Like, they were empty nesters. Mm-hmm. And some of it was just because they hadn't had it before. They got to a point in their life where there was just like, I just wanted it because I've been working to put my kids through school or whatever it was, and now I'm finally at the point where it happens. Whatever different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, maybe they want to host. They got a big family. They want to host Thanksgiving. They want to host parties.
Grandkids coming over.
Yeah,
things
and have the room where.
And so that totally makes sense too. But then you notice that after 10 years, 15 years of doing that, a lot of times they're like, this idea of mowing half an acre yard isn't as fun as it used to be. So people make different choices, but we respect them all. And I think the biggest thing, we go back to like what sets me apart from some people, I think one of the things that I should have touched on is I think I'm a pretty good listener. Like when people come in, you have to listen to what they want when they're telling you. And you also have to be able to see through it sometimes. Because maybe, especially with like first-time buyers and some people, they don't necessarily communicate it real well.
Right.
And they kind of know what they want, but then have you thought about this? No, not really. So you want to just bounce things off and be more of a consultant than a salesperson.
Yeah.
People say, oh, realtors are sales. No, you're not. We're information. We help them with that. We're facilitators. That's what we are. And then they have to be in the position where, one, you have to be patient, and you have to go out. And I know sometimes the clients will be like, oh man, I've been looking at so many houses. I know you're getting tired. I'm like, no, I do this every day.
This is what I do.
This is what I do. And I'm happy to go out and look at houses. There's no pressure here. We're going to look till you find the right house.
Right.
We're not going to look till you just find a house, because I want you to find the right house so that you're happy.
Right. We want you to have a plan. We want to know. Yes. We just don't want to just run out and see properties with no idea of things. But you're formulating. You might be formulating the plan as you're going out and seeing, and they're saying, oh, they're seeing stuff finally.
And when we're going through houses, a lot of times I'm looking for different things in there. Like I tell people, I'm like, you're going through and you're looking at the cosmetics and how things fit. I'm kind of looking at the ceiling, make sure there's no water leaks.
Yeah.
Or I'm looking around going, oh, there's a crack down here in the foundation. We got to keep a look. And obviously, most people are going to do home inspections.
Yeah.
But we're looking at them differently. So when I'm showing a home, I'm not going through and opening the closet and going, oh, look at all the room in the closet. I'm kind of letting people do their thing.
Yeah,
but I'm looking around, and as they go through, I want to point out the things that they might be missing so that they can make an informed decision, and then talk about different pros and cons of different things. Not only the house, but like location.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things we've been dealing with in the last couple of years here is in this area is lack of inventory.
Yeah.
And when there's lack of inventory, people, they get impatient. They need to find something. They want to buy something quick, and there's nothing out there. And then that's when they maybe make a bad decision on,
They feel like they got to do something, and they settle for something that they
settle for something, and then 5 years from now, when they call to sell, they're like, there's more houses on the market, and they, you don't want to be maybe backed up to the train tracks or something,
right,
whatever it is, or the junkyard or whatever,
yeah.
But and I'm not saying that there's houses that are there and people can, but you want to make sure you buy it at the right number so that you understand that later on it's still the location is something we can't change.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the kind of the different types of buyers that, clients that you work with that are buying. Like I've always tried to figure out, everyone's different, right? Like I was saying, and the typical first-time home buyer needs a lot of hand-holding, but sometimes they don't. They're very analytical, or hey, I just want to deal by text or email, and it's figuring out what they're most comfortable with. But I do always try to start with those first-time home buyers in particular and slow down and try to not assume that they know anything. And then I'm always like, hey, this is, if I'm going too slow and things, speak up, tell me that, hey, I understand this. I don't need, I'd rather give them more than less. Like the biggest thing that I've found out recently is the understanding that clients don't understand escrow and how the escrow, paying their taxes and insurance on their mortgage, works. So I started really slowing down and explaining that, particularly as they're going over the final numbers for closing. And I've found that they've been really appreciative of saying, wow, I didn't know that. And I've actually found that with repeat buyers. They were like, wow, no one ever explained this to me.
Yeah.
Now, the way that you explained it, I understand. And so that's kind of an example of a repeat buyers that kind of understand the process, but there's parts of it that they don't.
Yeah,
so
we all lost in the dust.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you another thing about escrows. I mean, sellers tend to be very appreciative after settlement when they get that check.
Right, right.
Because when buyers are going into it, when you're dealing on the other end, you're like, this is how they build that escrow account up, and there's a cushion.
Yeah.
And then, after settlement, they get the check. And then I've had a lot of sellers calling, and you try to tell them at settlement, there's a lot going on. They might forget. And they're like, you're going to get a check within about 30 days, probably a couple weeks. And it's your money.
It's your money. That's what you have to. That's the biggest thing I was explaining. Like, why am I sitting? I'm like, it's your money. Yeah. They're holding it, to pay it. at some time you're going to pay this mortgage off, whether you refinance or sell the property. That money in there that you've put away and set aside for us to manage to pay your taxes and insurance will come back to you.
Yeah, and it's a nice thing for a seller when they're done selling their house and they leave the table with their wire or their check or whatever, and then they call a couple of weeks later. And I got this other check and I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with it. I'm like, cash it.
Yeah,
it's yours.
Right.
It's yours.
That's great. All right, Scott. Let's get into the market reality. Let's get serious now. And I think that's probably what a lot of people want to hear us talk about is the market. And I get that. I mean, I'm multiple times a day I'm talking to people. Pat, what do you think about the market? Is it a right time to buy? Is it a right time for me to sell the property? And so what are you seeing out there that buyers and sellers need to know about today's market?
Well, first of all, when anybody asks that question, like, is it the right time to buy? I think that's a loaded question because it depends on your circumstances. It's not the right time to buy if you're going to be moving in 6 months.
Right.
But it's really never the right time to buy if you're going to. Life happens. Sometimes that comes along. But if you're going to be here for a few years, sure, it's the right time to buy. You're going to be fine if you buy and hold. It's always better to own,
right,
when you can. But it depends on your circumstances. If you're say, hey, I've got let's say it's a military person, they got a 2-year deployment, and they're coming into this area right now and say, what should I do? The market seems to be, prices are a bit high. I don't know if it's the right time to buy. I think it's something like that where you're talking 2.5 years. They know it's like pretty firm and they're going to be. Rental's probably a better option for that.
Yeah.
If somebody says, we see a lot of this right now where people during the COVID time when the rates got so low, I mean, they don't want to give up those mortgages.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably got people in house at 2.75, whatever, and then they call you today and you're like 6.5.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, it's a little bit.
Yeah.
So, but life happens, and it's been 5 years or so since then. Maybe they've had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that house doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah, they don't have enough space.
So they say, well, I don't want to give up this mortgage. Well, you can turn it into a rental.
Yeah, you don't have to sell.
No, you don't have to give it up. And you use it as a rental if you have the means, and keep it and rent it out, let it be an asset and let it work for you. But if you're saying, I need the equity out of the house, that's fine too. But just understand you're not getting 2.5 in today's market, unless you get an assumable somewhere or something like that. So when we get down into the actual brass tacks of the market, I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, there's a lot going on within the real estate market, a lot going on in the world. We can't control what's going on outside of us. One thing that happened, and I'm sure you're more sensitive to me, I mean, when Moody's downgraded the U.S. Treasury, on May 16th? And would the rates go up about 0.75% in one day?
That was pretty impactful.
And, nobody really knew that was coming because, Fitch, I think, had done it in 2011.
Yeah.
And S&P was like 2023, and out of nowhere, they just say, oh, now we're going to follow along. I mean, from 2000, so 14 years later or whatever, all of a sudden Moody's decides to follow, and it's like, and then the rates jump up.
Yeah. Settled down a little bit now, but the immediate reaction to it was when we saw a rate bump.
And we saw some things go on with the bond market when the tariffs were start being talked. I mean, there's things that we can't control.
Yeah.
And so people say, well, is it the right time to buy? Well, I mean, it's the right time to buy if you can find the house you want, you can afford it. And it's a right place for you. Sure. Yeah. Then, I mean, chances are rates will come down in time, and then you can refinance, or life happens. You might get a job transfer 5 years from now, or you decide that you need a bigger house or a smaller house. So there's things that trigger, that answer. So if somebody comes in and says, well, Pat, is it the right time to buy? Well, the question is like, give me the rest of the picture.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of time too, I feel like they're, they really want to know, are we going to have a real estate crash? That's really where it comes down to. And I always point to this incredible fact. I did a social media post about it here recently. And it's called Betting Against the Champ. And the champ is the housing market. Over the last, I was blown away by this. Over the last 82 years, there have been 7 down, this is nationwide, down negative appreciation over an 82 year period, 7 years. And 5 of those years were from 2006 to 2007 or 10 in that window. So beyond that blip that, was definitely an event, we saw it nationwide that was in effect, but those 5 years and then only 2 other years have we had down. I mean, that's the idea of saying, could we have a down year? And those down years were like 1%. 2%, other than 1 year in that 2006, 2010 window, which was a double digit negative. it's been a strong area. Where to put your money, real estate. It's the champ, and I'm, if you have a mortgage, every month you're making a mortgage payment. Not all of that goes to the bank, right? Not all of that goes to taxes, to insurance. There's principal. You're building principal every month, and that's growing each time, and not to mention the appreciation that you have in there. So that's kind of the message that I talk about. But you're right. You have to be ready financially. You have to feel comfortable with your job situation, whatever it might be. But if it is, it's, you're going to build wealth through owning real estate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had a lot of rental properties did very well for me. I mean, you can build a lot of wealth in real estate because you can leverage money.
Yeah,
and that's the thing you do. Like people say, well, I can put it in the stock market. Okay, well, for every dollar you put in the stock market, that's what you have in the stock market. You go and buy an investment house. Let's say you put 25% down. Well, you're still getting 3/4 of the money from the bank.
Right.
And so like you're leveraging your dollar to 3 times. So as you're paying down your principal, you're letting somebody else pay down your principal then, and you're building equity. And you sell that house 10 years from now, you're going to do well as long as you're not tapping.
And the average American, with inflation the way it's been over the last few years, they don't really have the disposable cash on a monthly basis to invest in the market. I mean, this is something owning. You got to live somewhere.
You do.
So you're either going to be paying a mortgage payment or a rent payment. So you gotta live somewhere. You got to pay something on a monthly basis for that.
The one thing I would caution people on it, and some people say, well, when they go to get a rental. If you're renting a house instead of owning it, the big difference is you're not going to get hit with maintenance. So that's something you have to think in the back of your mind too as a buyer. When you're owning a home, sometimes people come in they don't understand. There's deferred maintenance. Like houses, there's ththings that are going to go wrong.
Yes.
It's not all rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah, you're not calling the landlord to fix anything.
So
right?
like yesterday we're here and what was it 2 days? Yesterday and 2 days ago there's like mini tornadoes zipping around. So trees are falling down in people's yards. It falls down in your yard and it doesn't hit anything. You're not going to call your insurance company. You got to get out there and deal with it. And so that now you have if you're in a rental, you call your landlord and they take care of it for you.
Right.
But the thing is, it's also the other way. When you're out there living in your own home and you're improving it, there's something that goes into that too. You go out and work on projects and let's say something as simple as just painting the house. You're able to do that. If you're living in a rental, the landlord has to approve that.
Right.
So there's a balancing act, and so. There's a lot that goes to it, but I think when you go back to your question, which is like, and I think it's very the right observations. People are like, is there going to be a crash? And the difference between this and 2007 or whatever is the amount of money that people have in equity in their homes.
Yeah,
we're not. 2006, 2007, we saw it coming.
Yeah. You were doing. There was 100%. Most of it, 100% financing.
103%.
Yeah, even there, and there was lending that was going on that. No doc, stated income. There was nothing. It was based off of nothing for a lot, and poor credit. It was building to be a disaster that finally did pop. And now the way lending is these days, it's definitely much more strict, qualifications. So that at least in theory, the buyer should be much more well qualified. So I don't see something of that magnitude happening.
No, and if we go back and you look at some of the stats, like one of the interesting stats that I think people need to look at is if you go back and compare last year, 2024, when they have full stats, to 2000, and the number of transactions. We're down like 40% nationwide.
Right.
And it compares it was like over it's like 6.5 million or something in 2024. And we're down like 4 point something million. And during that time, from 2000 to 2024, that's when you had all the low interest rates. That's when you had all but prices have gone up. So when you look at the units sold compared to the dollars, it's not a 40% drop off.
Yeah,
it may be 25% or I don't know.
Right. But the total number of deals.
So that means there's during that time a lot of equity was built.
Yeah.
So the bottom's not going to fall out of the market like it did in 2007 or 2008 when it did hit the ground.
Yeah, and inventory is not they were building like crazy back in the early 2000s where after the bubble they stopped building.
Yeah,
essentially the builders weren't building.
Well, builders went bankrupt.
I don't see a scenario where suddenly, in our area, but certainly in our area where we're suddenly going to have a ton of inventory. That they're
Inventory-
they're building, but they're not built. They're still not building. I don't think fast enough.
Inventory is building a little bit, but right now, and I looked on Anne Arundel County in May. I mean, it's 1.8 months right now.
Right.
There's not we're not looking at, back then it was like 11 months.
Yeah.
I mean, there were periods of time like back then we had 40, 50 houses on the market, and you're hoping a couple would sell every month.
Yeah.
And it was difficult. And what would happen is, this is what people didn't realize, is that as that would go on, there would be people that would come along that would have to sell. So like some people go on the market back then, and they would say, I'm not gonna go below this price. But then two of their neighbors would sell for 30,000 lower. Like your prices went away.
Yeah.
And so now you either have to stay there or so there is you have to, one of the ways you can look at that when you're buying or when you're selling is you want to talk to your realtor and really get an idea of what the stats are in that particular area. Because when you talk about our area in general, yeah, we don't have a huge amount of construction going on. There's some developments or whatever. So and one of the questions coming back to the market that you probably get when people say that too is like, there's been some cuts in the government, which is our biggest employer in the area, right? I mean, we've seen that. And how's that impacted things? Well, I mean, at first people thought the bottom was going to fall out, but it really hasn't.
Right.
Really hasn't. There's still plenty of good jobs in this area. We have stable employment. We're not dependent on, the GM factory only, that if all of a sudden they go down, the whole town goes down.
Right.
So that's the thing that's
the
nice.
mill's not going to close.
Yeah,
right.
We're okay.
Right,
and when you're sitting between Baltimore, DC, and Annapolis, if somebody loses their job in DC, they might be able to pick up another job, even Columbia or wherever.
Yeah.
There's a lot of.
There's not going to be a mass with the Fed cuts. People ask me like, oh, people are going to sell their house. Well, where are they going to go?
Yeah.
Like that. Is there some other magic job fairy market that they're going to leave the DC area if they lost their federal government job? Probably not.
And it's not usually the best time to buy when you're unemployed.
Right.
So like they don't really have, like, the best thing for them at that point is to just figure it out and stay there as long as they can. Yeah. And it's not to say that it's easy.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of people doing side hustles and everything else, but you got to respect that. You got to keep a roof over your head until you get what you want. Because in time, I think we've seen the job market the private sector starting to build back up a little bit. So like people, and around us, I mean, a ton of people have clearances, so they're always in demand.
Yeah.
So if somebody's coming to you and saying, hey, Pat, is it a good time to buy? Well, in this area, I think you're going to be fine.
Right.
There's a lot going on in the market when it's fluid like this. Mm-hmm. I definitely don't think it's anything like 2007 when literally just came home. It was just like every day was like a gut punch. I mean,
I just think that, I've talked to a lot of clients that ask the question about is it a time to buy, and they may or may not have been in the market during the early COVID years where it was ultra low rates but ultra competitive. But even as the rates rose, it was still extremely competitive. I mean, I think about a lot of my clients going through double digit offers.
Oh yeah,
they had to waive everything, essentially almost short of giving their firstborn up to win the contract. You weren't getting home inspections in a lot of cases. You weren't getting protection of an appraisal on there. You were maybe offering $50,000, $75,000 over the list to get the house. Now, I mean, that's an extreme seller's market. I felt it was challenging for a lot of buyers out there, and now suddenly we're in a situation where they can breathe a little bit. They can think about the house that they're making an offer on, making a educated offer on price, can get all the protections that they need. The home inspection, you want to have a home inspection every time, and I hated that, but that's what it took at a certain point to be able to get it. Now you're in a situation where maybe you can negotiate some help from a seller towards some of your closing costs, or negotiate on price. So it's
and you can use that closing cost to get some points and get the rate down a little bit.
You can buy the rate down. You can have the seller help buy the rate down.
And I think you made a great point. I mean, the difference. I looked at the Anne Arundel County for May of 2024. The median days on the market were about 16 days. So certainly still favoring the sellers.
Yeah.
But it's not 16 hours.
Yeah.
Which is what they.
Yeah.
And when people go in and you're asking somebody to spend $300,000, $800,000, $2 million, whatever it is, and they don't have enough time. They spend more time thinking about what washer and dryer they're going to buy. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it was great for sellers, but not really really hard on buyers. And like you said, it's that decision that you regret. You just never
That's when you
want to
make
see.
it.
Yeah, that's when you make it, when you feel like you're under the gun, and maybe you made multiple offers on houses, kept not getting it, and then you're finally like, I'm not losing another one.
That's usually what
That's the mentality.
And from a seller's perspective, their thing is if they're getting 5, 6, 7 offers, they're hoping that they get one of those every time. That's all it needs, one that's coming in saying, "I'll give you everything."
Yes,
and they don't care. I mean,
and that was often happening.
Well, I've been on the other side of it. We've had 10 offers on a property that's been listed at the top of the market, and you're looking at it going, how did we we didn't underlist the price,
right?
Because you're looking at it going, I don't even think it can maybe appraise for what the asking price is a push.
What you listed it for was a push.
So the next thing you're looking at is the appraisal waivers and everything. Somebody coming in saying I'll pay $20,000 above appraisal, $50,000 above appraisal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So when you're going through that time, that's that irrational exuberance that like Warren Buffett. But so like if you're a buyer who was in that market a couple years ago and got frustrated and maybe said I'm gonna stay put or whatever, now you can kind of come back out and look at it. And I also tell people when you're looking, like they say, well, the rates are a little higher, I don't really want to spend that much. Okay, well let's say you want to spend $650,000. Look up to $700.
Yeah.
Because you may be able to negotiate it down, and that house that maybe the price might come down.
Where a couple of years ago you would have been saying you need to be looking at houses at 600. Because we're going to probably end up at 650.
Exactly.
So now you can go the other way, and the thing that I point to is when I do hear a client say, "I'm just going to wait for rates to come down." My response to that normally is, well, if rates come down, what do you think is going to happen to home prices? Mm-hmm. And they're like, I guess they'll go up. And that's the kind of the idea that. You're not in a vacuum. If rates go down, doesn't mean home prices would necessarily stay the same. With our low inventory,
it could explode.
It explode, and there's there is buyer demand. It's being quelled a little bit, I think, certainly by rates, by home prices,
uncertainty,
uncertainty in the market. I think people are a little bit talked about inflation before, are a little bit beat down by some of those things. But suddenly, if stuff opens up, rates are better. I think that, with our low inventory, because at the end of the day, it's still the most basic principle of economics, supply and demand.
100%.
And when there isn't, that's how, mortgage rates have risen over the last couple of years to the highest in 24 years. Every year, home prices have gone up. And that's because there's no supply. And, that my feeling is that when we see lower rates, we'll see, I don't know if explosion is the right word, but it certainly an increase. So you wait to get that lower rate, but because you pay $25,000-$50,000 more on the house that you would have gotten before, the monthly payment's actually higher.
Yes.
And if you get in while they're here and you can negotiate a good deal, when mortgage rates drop, we refinance you down.
Well, you marry the house and you date the rate.
Right. That's
and that's the thing is if you know where you want to live, if you have an area that you like or a house that you like, and it may be a little uncomfortable, but you figure you have to do it for 6 months, a year, 18 months, whatever. But you're where you want to be.
Yeah.
You're not going to. The extra couple $100 a month isn't going to be a big deal for your happiness.
Yeah.
And that's what you're looking at is like you're coming home to it every day. And so when people say like when they're looking for a house, I mean, if I'm working with a buyer, they're like, what do you think? What do you think? But like I'll give opinion based on like potential resale value or the bones of the house or whatever. Yeah. But they're driving home to it every night, and you want to feel like it's home.
Yeah.
And so if you're coming into a place and it feels like it's home and it's costing you a few $100s more a month, I mean, worst case scenario, maybe instead of getting a new car, you just keep yours on the road for a little bit longer until that rate comes down. Then you adjust if you have to.
Yeah.
But do you want to come home to a place every day that you've compromised on, and you're not happy because you were waiting for the rates to come down?
Yeah.
And and this isn't every person has to make their own decision.
They have to make their own decision. They have
that's
to be comfortable
and
you're just want to make sure they have all the information and just not thinking. I usually run into the most and just getting back to like it's not in a vacuum where rates come down, my payment will be lower.
No,
there are other factors in there. That
taxes have been going up.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, so rates come down. Property values go up. Taxes go up. I mean, insurance has been going up. We talked about the escrows at the beginning.
Yeah,
you could be in a 30-year fix, and your payment still might be going up a little bit every just depending on how things are moving. So there's a little bit of that, but I think what people have to see right now is, or if they're smart, is you look out there, and maybe if you're just casually looking, and all of a sudden a home pops on the market that that you would maybe not have a chance to get otherwise, like some unique waterfront house or
Yeah.
some home that you've always liked in a certain area with a certain lot, and and it all of a sudden pops up, and you're like, oh man, I wish the rates were at 5% or I'd buy it. Well, that house comes on the market like once every 20 years. You're gonna wait. I mean, just get it. You'll get the rates back down it'll settle down, and everybody will be able to settle in. But you can get that place you want if it's for you. Some people don't really have the concern as much because maybe they're traveling all the time, and to them it's just a roof over their head, and they're just shutting the door and like, man, I travel 5 days a week. I don't, I just want something that's reasonable. That's fine too. Each person has to figure out what they want. They might not want some fancy home. They just want a place to put their stuff when they're not on the road.
Yeah.
And that again, it's all an individual thing. But I think when you talk about the investment portion of real estate, like when you're looking at stats, like what's going to be down, you're fine. If you're gonna be in it for a while, you have nothing to worry about. I don't think we're looking at anything like from 2007 to what was it, 2011 when they turned around. Some of those prices I remember. People say we'll never see those prices again, and we've blown past those.
Yeah, right.
Like they're in the rearview mirror. Like, and there was a period of time a couple years ago where a lot of people got stuck in homes because they were upside down or whatever. And then they held them like begrudgingly to be a rental, and then they could get out of them. They sold them because they didn't. Maybe they moved out of state and they didn't want a rental home anymore. But they were like, I didn't know if I'd ever get back to that number. They were able to get out and make profits.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. There was definitely that was a interesting time for sure.
It was.
All right, Scott. So I wanted to ask you, what do you like most about being a real estate agent?
Well, personally, what I like most about it is, the flexibility of my schedule because you're your own boss. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, that's like people say, what do you like most about the business? Well, you're your own boss in that I work when I decide to work. People say, well, you have your own control of your schedule. Well, now my clients kind of control that to a point. So you have your own schedule, but you don't really know when your time off is. But no, the as far as that goes, the independence of it, as far as being a realtor, what I like most about the actual business is getting to meet people and help them find what they want. As I touched on a little bit earlier, like it's not if you help people find what they like. It's usually a really rewarding experience. When somebody gets a new
They're
house.
happy. They're happy.
But it's not always that way. Obviously, when I'm selling houses, it's not always because it's a good thing. There's different life triggers that it could be an estate.
Right.
It could be divorce. It could be there's a lot of reasons that people sell houses, and maybe lost their job, or maybe they're moving. They don't want to transfer, but they have to. So there's negative there too. So the most rewarding part is when you a lot of times working with that first time buyer because they're so excited. Like people say, well, you don't make as much money from me, but it's fun.
Yeah.
Because they're so excited. So so that's the part that is the most enjoyable. Now, and it's it's no different than when you're working with somebody who's moving up because they're really excited too. But it's like when you get your first car, there's like nothing like it. Like your first car, my first car. It's probably not anywhere. It's probably a piece of junk compared to what we drive today.
Yeah, right.
But it was the most exciting time because there's the freedom that goes into it, right? So that's part of it. I think that when we go back and look, I think what I try to focus on, and this is like when working with you with buyers and stuff, is experience. And what we mean by that, like you want that buyer to have a smooth experience from the time they find a house to when they get to the to the loan process, to getting to the settlement table on time. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, when you're working on them, I feel like that's never been a problem. Like you get the deals to the table on time. There's no surprises.
Yeah,
there's nothing like that. Sometimes people come with their own people or whatever, and it can be a little rough. And back in the day before you had to have the closing disclosure 3 days early and stuff. There was some times where people
you were in the lobby of closing, and you're like hoping that they'd have the docs there for closing.
Well, that and you're hoping the numbers are right.
Right. They match what they told them.
Yeah, you're working with a loan officer on, and being on the listing side a lot. I'm sitting there with my sellers, and the buyers come over and they're like, "Oh my God, we need $1,500 more than we thought," or something. Or
that's when buyers and sellers were in the room together.
Yeah,
for closing. Remember those days?
Yeah. Once in a while now, not as much.
Yeah.
That was one of the big changes in COVID.
Yeah,
everybody started separating.
Yeah,
which it depends on the state. I think that was a lot. Our state's a wet settlement state, not an escrow state. But a lot of escrow states, they were like that forever.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think it's bad or good that they're in the room together. I just think it slows the process down.
Yeah.
And I also think when somebody's selling their house, I don't really think it's their business to see what the buyer's rate is. It's just they should focus on their side and the other. It's a transaction, it's a business deal. Yeah. But then, a lot of times they become friendly or whatever, and that's good too. So it's like, I don't mind when they're in there as a mutual settlement. I think sometimes it's a little less efficient.
Right.
And I also think sometimes they get a little distracted because maybe one party's talking about something else and somebody's missing something going across the page. So it's a
right,
little.
right. They're just focused on their thing, signing their stuff.
They're working with the title person.
Yeah.
If there's a question, I think people are less apprehensive to ask a question if they're by themselves. Where they don't want to come up and like ask a question with the opinion that, oh my gosh, I should know this.
Right.
I think buyers are usually more comfortable, and I think sellers, when I'm representing a seller, I mean, we've gone over all those numbers prior to. By the time we're to the table, I mean, as long as those numbers are right, it's done. We want to glance and make sure everything's what it was, what they gave it to us, and then, it's a sign time.
Yeah.
It's the same. I mean, the
Yeah.
buyers.
And I go over once we have the final numbers. I'm walking the client completely through that, and I'm shocked to find out that is not normal. Like,
It's
not
not normal.
that's, to me, it's like this is what we did the whole thing for, and
That's your job.
I want to make sure that you're comfortable with the numbers. Yeah. And for me, like, I kind of look at this is where I'm strutting my stuff too, right? Like I'm like, these are the numbers, exactly what we talked about, and now we're done. Like, I want to, and that part of it, and it's wild to hear that doesn't go on. It's kind of crazy to me.
Pat, you have no idea. I mean, I've had deals before where I'm on the listing side, and for some reason the deal goes a couple days late or something, and the buyer shows up. The buyers are there with their buyer agent. Let's say it's 2-3 days late because something with the loan, and it closes, and the loan officer sitting there pounding his chest like he's done the greatest job in the world. I'm like, dude, you're 3 days late on this.
Yeah.
Like this is like people's lives, and like and not to say that happens often, but we're usually on top of it. So like the worst scenario is if you have another deal behind it.
Yeah. I mean,
and you got people that like a domino, and some of these people just like, well, we got it done. I'm like, well, you missed the deadline.
Yeah.
And it depends what they're doing in their business. I mean, like New York, for instance, a lot of the contracts are written on or about.
Yeah.
It's not the way it is in Maryland. It's on.
Yeah, there's some other North Carolina's owner, and I'm at a shocked that they're like, we're not. You don't really care if we close on time. I'm like,
no, it's totally different.
Yeah,
it's like a week before, a week after. It's like an escrow. Everybody's not there at the same time. But it's a very different process in Maryland. So it is a wet settlement state. It's a little more pressure.
Yeah.
But like if you do your job right.
Yeah.
I mean,
I feel like that's what allows us to separate ourselves from other lenders, and
100%.
And that we're good with the pressure. Bring it on.
And it's not to say that we don't. I mean, we've all made mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not perfect, we're not infallible, but you fix it.
Yeah,
you take care of it.
If there's a problem, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, what's our path?
How do we resolve it?
How do we resolve it? Then I'm calling the parties and saying, hey, this is what's happened. Here's where we are. But here's what we're gonna do, and here's the timetable. Bad news doesn't get any better by sitting on it and waiting on it.
No, you got to let people know.
Yeah. So
I mean, and we've talked about this before. Like, I mean, for instance, right now you're battling with the condo associations. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these condo association approvals are issues.
Every condo deal, it's like, let's see what happens, because it's you're dealing. They're just the condo rules are a little bit archaic that we have to deal with, but it is what we have to deal with. And the management companies, what's kind of going on with the raising of insurance premiums and just some stuff with inflation, causing some different things that are happening at the condo associations, along with deferred maintenance has become a huge thing out there since that building in the Miami area collapsed. Condominiums have become a bit of a challenge. It's kind of a village to get it to closing, and that includes having the agents, maybe the seller involved. Mm-hmm. Some of the management companies are, we'll say, just not as responsive or on top of things.
Well, yeah, and so when you get to that part, I mean, no matter how well you do your job or I do my job, I mean, some of the stuff's outside of our control.
Yeah,
but the problem is, it's not that there's a problem with the condo association. It's a problem when the lender finds that out 2 days before settlement.
Right.
Like, you get on it, you deal with it. And you might, like you said, good news doesn't get any better by waiting on it.
Yeah.
So if you find there's a problem and you address it early, we can work through it.
We usually work through it. And if hopefully it gets us there on time, or if everybody knows, hey, there's something that's going on here that we need to wait on, then we'll make changes.
The moving truck's not backing up to the
right. Exactly.
And that's the big difference. Yeah. And so when you have somebody out there who's doing their job the way you do it, and you have it done early, even if there's bad news because it's something that's outside of our control. I mean, insurability for a single family home could be a problem, right? I mean, there could be issues with that. We got, the insurance companies go out and inspect the roof or something. Well, we don't want them calling for insurance 24 hours before settlement. So those are things that we can cut off and make it smooth, so the experience is better, because especially people at the end remember the experience, and they don't want to be in there going, oh my God, I don't know if this thing's going to happen.
Yeah.
We want to have it ready to go. So.
Yeah, we try. My goal. I kind of look at it when we talked about the first-time home buyers and the repeat buyers. My general goal is for the repeat buyers that probably had a bad experience at some point in their home buying or refinancing life, is for them to say, this was the best experience I've ever had. And that's myself and my team's goal. The first-time home buyers that have no frame of reference, that are nervous and don't understand the process walking into it, hopefully we've taught them and given them those things, is the answer is this wasn't as bad as we thought it would be.
This was easy.
That I take that as a win. It wasn't as bad as we thought, because they don't know.
No,
they don't have the frame of reference. So
we're sitting at the settlement table and a buyer says that. I said, no, we're going to draw blood later.
Yeah, right.
Because they've heard these horror stories.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, the reason it wasn't as bad is because everybody did
their job,
including that buyer who got the documents to you.
Well, that's it. That's the important part, and that's the thing. Like, I would try to get the thing and say, hey, this is a team effort.
Yeah, we're all on the same team.
Particularly when we have, we try to, in some cases, to be competitive, we can close a mortgage in as fast as 10 days. So and sometimes we use that strategy. We've used that strategy before in a competitive situation to maybe help the buyer win. And in those, I say, yes, I can close in 2 weeks or whatever the time frame is, but I need everybody to, it's got to be that jump. How high?
Yeah, that means that means the papers need to be here tomorrow.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I need, when my underwriter asks for something, or we need something from the client. Yeah, I need that. If I need something from you or the list, whoever is involved in it, it
can't be a 3-day turnaround.
It is a true team effort.
Yeah, he gives.
Okay. All right, Scott. Let's. I feel like every podcast has to have some sort of rapid fire question. Maybe at some point. We'll have a name for this, but we're going to... You ready to do this?
Sure.
A rapid fire? All right. Best restaurant in Maryland. And maybe stay in the areas that we talked about.
Well, I mean, my favorite that we go to, it's in it's outside of our area a little bit. I like going to Little Italy in Baltimore.
Okay.
Yeah, Benny's is up there. I really like that. Amici's. There's some up there that I really enjoy. So those are some of my favorite Italian places to go to that I really enjoy. But if you're in Maryland... people are going to say, "Oh, it's got to be seafood. It's got to be seafood."
But I love. Do you dress like you're part of the Sopranos? Like when you show up there? No.
Go up there very casual.
Yeah, okay.
But no. I think Little Italy has got some of the best food around and the best values. If you're looking for something good that's not too far away, Little Italy in Baltimore is my spot.
All right. You said seafood. Let's say Old Bay on everything, or just crabs?
Everything.
Yeah,
I'm an Old Bay guy. I like Old Bay, and a little bit of a misnomer. Like my brothers own a seafood restaurant,
right?
And they use JO. A lot of those places use JO seafood,
but a little bit. That helps the bottom line, right?
Yeah. I'm an Old Bay guy.
Yeah, right. But yeah, in Vegas they don't know, right? So you can get away with JO.
I think you can get away with some of these places around here too. But they're big JO. But I'm an Old Bay guy. I like Old Bay.
All right, when you're going to the beach, is it the Maryland beaches or the Delaware beaches?
Maryland beaches. I like Ocean City.
Ocean City.
Beach. But I mean, honestly, I haven't gone to the beach as much as I used to when the kids were young, because of all the sports that they were playing for a long time. But I'm more familiar, more comfortable with the Ocean City beach. But Delaware beaches are great too.
I think it's great because you get, when you're down there, you can kind of they're so close to one another. You can experience that fun vibe of the Ocean City, the boardwalk, the kids like that. But then you can go do the some of the Delaware beaches. So
I will say, when I'm in Ocean City, it's North Ocean City, like up by the Delaware area.
Right.
So I'm not a huge. The boardwalk is like, if I'm down there for a week, it might be 1 hour. It's not a little crazy down there.
All right, we're going to get. This is a very important question. This is probably the most important question I've asked you today. Redskins or Ravens?
Redskins.
Okay.
Redskins. We're both Redskins.
I knew the answer to that question, but I still wanted to ask.
I mean, we've been through some bad times.
Yeah. We're back, baby. We're back.
It's been hard to be a Redskins fan while these Ravens fans have been doing well. Yeah. Finally, last year the game had meaning.
Yeah. We're back. All right. We'll stay. We'll do another Baltimore DC one. Orioles or Nationals?
That's tough. I like them both. I always like the Orioles a little more because of the DH, but now they got the DH in both.
Yeah.
Both. I mean, if it comes down to it, I like Camden Yards better than Nationals Park.
Okay.
Not because Nationals Park isn't nice. I just think Camden Yards is awesome.
Yeah. That started the trend of all. They were the originator of that old school kind of feel.
But we had, I mean, I had partial plan seats for the Nationals for years. I mean, Ryan and his friends, they like going. We went to the All-Star Home Run Derby down there.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful park. I mean, you can't go wrong either way. So what's nice about that is you can look at the schedule and go, well, which one's playing today?
Yeah, you go to either one.
There's always something to do around here.
That's a good way to tie it back.
And we can throw in the Bay Sox.
Right. That's a good way to tie it back into real estate. All right, we're going to ask the last question here. I don't know if this is going to show up on the camera here. But who is the best fantasy football owner you've ever seen?
I really don't know. I can say the most successful in the one league that I'm in would be you. but I don't know if that's the best or that's luck.
Right. We're going to go with the defending champion, the 4-time Chapel Grove fantasy football champion. That's me. But
4-time. That's
more than I thought. Impressive.
Didn't you win last year? I think was kind of a little bit of a lucky run there at the end.
Scott, every year is a lucky year. Okay.
No, you actually are very good at fantasy football for some reason.
I probably spend way too much time on it. That may be it.
Somehow you got on the Travis Kelce bandwagon before it was cool.
I was before Taylor Swift on the Kelce bandwagon.
Yeah, you definitely were dating Travis Kelce before Taylor Swift.
Hey, whatever it takes. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up here. Scott, can you tell the listeners, all the listeners that are listening right now, how they can reach you, what the best way to reach you?
I mean, I'm on all the socials, but the best way to reach me is just my website, scottsmolen.com. It's SCOTTSMOLEN.com. And all the links are on there. You can email, call, text, everything. And my cell number is 301-651-1261. And you can reach me there directly anytime. I'm happy to talk to anybody. If you have any questions, it doesn't have to be that you're going to sell your house tomorrow. If you just have some questions, want some feedback on something, we're happy to always do that for you.
Great. Well, and that's why I wanted Scott to be part of it. As I said, the maiden voyage of the podcast here. I've known him a long time. I trust him implicitly. You're in great hands with Scott. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up here for the Hangin with Gannon podcast, first episode here. We will be back. I think this one, I was really pleased with the way this went. We will be back. There'll be details on it, but please give your shout outs on this podcast. Any thoughts that we could do better on the next one? But thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.
And thank you, Pat, for having me out here today. I appreciate it. This is fun.
Well, thanks for hanging with Gannon.
Yep.
Take care.